so we'll continue. So now we're on to the next topic, which is the functions of emotion in three areas of life: intrapersonal, interpersonal, and sociocultural. So the term intrapersonal refers to the subjective experiences of the self. So it's everything that occurs within oneself. So it describes, when we talk about the intrapersonal, the functions of the emotion interpersonal life, it refers to the effects of emotion to individuals that occur physically inside their bodies and psychologically inside their minds. And so we know that emotions propel us to act quickly. They prepare us for action. So emotions motivate behavior. They facilitate behavior. It doesn't mean that they will always produce a certain form of the behavior, but they will certainly facilitate the behavior, prepare us for that behavior. Because there are other factors that will influence whether the person will engage in the behavior or not, such as the context that they find themselves in, the target of the behavior, their past experiences, their history with taking action in certain contexts and following through, or listening, or being informed by their emotions, and allowing them to guide their actions. All those variables factor in and determine whether a person will actually take action. Then we know that, here we know that emotions influence thoughts. So you may find yourself sometimes being in a very positive emotional state. Perhaps you're having a good time, you're recollecting certain events that you've had in your life, remembering on past experiences that were positive. Perhaps you're having a conversation with friends, and then you're more likely to recall past experiences, other past experiences that share a common positive emotional state. So this is very important, because when we're in a positive emotional state, it becomes more, it's with more ease that we recall events that where we've also experienced a positive state. And that applies for the opposite as well. So if we are in a sad state, we might recall more events of a sad nature. And then finally, emotions motivate future behavior. So this is important, because the emotional state that we're trying to achieve may help us, may direct our behavior, and propel us to take certain behavior. If we want to experience a sense of achievement, we may work harder in order to experience that achievement. Or if we want to avoid experiencing some negative emotions, it might propel us into taking action to avoid the experience of those negative emotions. Now we're going to look at the function of emotion in the interpersonal domain. So when the term interpersonal describes our connection or relationship, interaction with two or more individuals. So it's the basis of our connectivity to others around us. So the interpersonal functions of emotion refer to the effects of one's emotions on others, or the relationship between oneself and the other. And invariably, you may have had experiences where how a person who is near you, their emotional state is actually affecting, having an impact on your emotional state as well. And so that's why we find ourselves influenced by those around us if they have a negative state, or and by the same token, where we experience the emotion if they have a positive state. So this is a very important characteristic as well. So, in addition to the influence that one's emotions has on others around them, emotions carry important communicative functions in that they relay information about one's emotional state. And this information is very valuable in social situations because they they signal the nature of the interpersonal relationship, and they evoke responses in others that are adaptive given the particular situation that they're in. So certain emotional cues that are displayed by a person will communicate that person's emotional state, and the persons around will react in a way that is adaptive given the situation that is formed or contextualized by this communication. Oh, and the last, I also wanted to indicate that because, as we mentioned, the facial expressions of emotion are universal cues, they're universal signals. They communicate information not only about the person's psychological state, but also about their intent and and their subsequent behavior. So if somebody has the facial cues that are indicative of anger or aggression, then those cues will signal that this person may have a given intent to those around him or her, so that um, they will be interpreted in an adaptive way as well. So they facilitate adaptive behaviors in perceivers. And finally, the emotional expressions also signal the nature of the interpersonal relationships. So it signals what type of relationship exists between the two participants, or uh, multiple participants. And so the way that the tone of voice, the smiling, um, the body language, all those can communicate a level of intimacy between partners that that is not experienced between other individuals. So it's only specific to romantic partners. Okay, now let's also look at um, the the role or the functions of. Okay, and now we're going to look at the functions of emotion in the context, or in the social cultural context. So culture is a very important construct. Culture coordinates and organizes the complex social world that people are a part of. It provides a system of meaning and information that is relayed and shared across generations, and it allows people to meet basic needs of survival, to pursue happiness, and derive meaning from life. Now, in the context of one's culture, humans build worldviews, and these are attitudes, values, beliefs, and norms. And in the particular, as they relate to emotions, there are worldviews or attitudes, values, and beliefs and norms that are related to emotion. So our cultural background, which is conveyed through parenting and cultural products, shapes our worldview about which emotions are ideal to have, to not have, and when to have them. And so, for instance, there are cultural display rules. Cultural display rules help people manage or modify their emotions. So they're learned early in life and specify how to exhibit emotions in particular social circumstances. So when we think about social and cultural functions of emotion, what we're describing is that Individuals are members of many groups. They have numerous social roles and are expected to behave in a multitude of ways, depending on the various or the discrete situation they find themselves in. So culturally moderated emotions help us engage in socially appropriate behaviors, and those are defined by our cultures, and they reduce the social complexity of our world, and thus they increase social order. Now, when the next step is to talk about the theories of foundational theories of the emotion, which are the James Lange theory and the Cannon-Bard theory of emotion. Okay, one second. So here we'll describe, we'll look at the the foundational theories of emotion, which are the James Lange theory and the Cannon-Bard theory. So when we think about emotions such as fear, our common sense or our intuitive understanding of the experience would be that there's a frightening situation, one that a person feels is threatening them, is frightening, in response to which they experience an emotion such as fear, resultant from which are certain behaviors and physiological effects. But the James Lange theory proposes a different perspective. So the James Lange theory of emotion asserts that emotion arises from our physiological arousal. So recall what you've learned about the sympathetic nervous system and the fight or flight or freeze response that one experiences when they are threatened. So according to the James Lange theory, if a person were to encounter a threat in their environment, like for instance a venomous snake in their backyard, then the sympathetic nervous system would initiate significant physiological arousal. So there's been some physiological reactions, the fight-flight response, increased heart rate, and escape. And that, according to the James Lange theory, you would only experience the feeling of fear after this physiological arousal has taken place. And so the emotion that one would experience would be the interpretation, based on the interpretation of those physiological responses. So in other words, the James Lange theory describes that our experience of emotion, so our subjective experience, the feeling part, so the subjective experience, the label that we assign, that is based on our awareness of our physiological responses to emotionally arousing stimuli. So in other words, if there's a threatening stimulus, such as the sight of an oncoming car, the person would first experience a physiological state, such as a pounding heart, sweaty palms, and their interpretation of that physiological state would result in their emotion. So it's after they have interpreted, they have labeled those physiological reactions, only then do they have a subjective experience of a feeling. So they only then do they. So the Cannon-Bard theory is a rebuttal to this, to the James Lange theory that we've looked at earlier. So according to the Cannon-Bard theory, the physiological arousal and the emotional experience occur simultaneously. So when the person, for instance, sees a car in the horizon driving toward them, they feel the fear at exactly the same time that the body creates the fight or flight response. So the emotional reaction, so the feeling of fear would be separate and independent of the physiological arousal, even though they co-occur. So they're two simultaneous events. They're independent of each other. They're separate and independent of each other. And yet, but it's important to say that they co-occur. So even though they co-occur, they are separate and independent of each other.